Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 36 of Lean In Olympia. My name is Meg Martin. I'm the executive director for Interfaithworks. Lean In Olympia is our biweekly show that is hosted by me and my colleague Corey Passons, and we cover all types of topics from humanity to justice to belief to different hot topics happening in our community. And it's been since August that I've been with you all, so I'm really happy to be back. And today I'm super excited because we are highlighting one of what I believe to be the gems of the Interfaithworks Homeless Services Program, our REST program. So I'm joined today by Raven Scrivener and Wendy Mosier. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. And there is so much that I could say about both of you and everything that you have contributed to not only the fabric and story of Interfaithworks, but also to our community as a whole. But I would love for everyone to hear from you directly about that. So could you both tell me just a little bit about yourselves, what role you play at Interfaithworks, anything that you'd like to share with the community?
Yeah, I can go. I have worked for Interfaith for 5 years, almost 5 years now. And I started out as support staff, had been on the maintenance committee, worked at the community care center, the support staff there, and then was an outreach navigator for about a year. And then now I'm case manager at REST.
Can you say for people who might not be familiar what the support staff role is typically?
Oh, yeah. Basically, we just staff the shelter. We make beds, clean, do a lot of cleaning, manage personalities, I think, and break up fights and,
Yeah.
And mostly lend an ear to people that need to talk to. The way I often describe it is like sometimes we're, as staff, are the face of like the house community, and so people will just kind of like vent a little bit about their kind of frustrations about living in a shelter, and so to really absorb some things, and I got to know a lot of really amazing, wonderful people.
Yeah, our support staff are the heartbeat of everything that we do on the front lines. So Awesome. Thank you. Wendy, you want to share a little bit?
Sure. My name is Wendy. I've been working for Interfaith for about 4 years now. I also started out as a support staff at the FCC location, and I was also on maintenance committee. And I also staffed the CCC a couple of times, for a little while there. And then I moved into the REST navigator position, and will soon be moving into the navigation team operations manager position.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah.
Would you both talk just a little bit in your own words about the navigation team and what it is, kind of the philosophy behind it? Do you want to start, Raven?
Oh, sure. Yeah. When I started working on Nav team, it was right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And since there was sort of like the shelter in place that everyone was doing, a lot of homeless people were sheltering in camps. A lot of businesses were closed, and we were bringing supplies out to the encampments. And a lot of what we did at the beginning was to help people get signed up for stimulus checks. Me and one of my colleagues had calculated that we had brought in, just the two of us had brought in $150,000 worth of stimulus checks into Olympia. There, back in 2020, that was like, we were helping drive the economy that way through.
Yeah. And getting that stimulus money into the hands of people who were at highest risk of contracting COVID in many cases, and lowest access to resources to stay safe. So that was a really amazing thing.
Yeah. And we would help people get replacement IDs, identifying documents. We would help people get signed up with disability, things like that. In some cases, finding housing, but housing's hard. So,
Yeah.
but we would get people started doing coordinated entry assessments. A lot of that.
I think it was really amazing starting out as a support staff member because you get to know the people in the community, and then moving into a navigator position, starting out as support staff really gave me a lot of perspective into the struggle that people deal with every day when they're not housed. And then, when I started the job, I was like, I want to help people. And I didn't realize that something as simple as lending an ear would be as helpful as it was. And so it was really awesome to get that, that perspective of like what is valuable and what is meaningful to people. It's also just really cool to be able to help people walk through the bureaucracy of applying for EBT benefits. Like that can be a really difficult thing to do for anybody, let alone someone who might have tracking issues or have had a negative interaction with organizations like governmental organizations and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been really amazing getting to move through all of the different aspects of this organization and to see the way that it affects all of our people,
Yeah, we have when people get to their 5 years, they get initiated into the Salty Dog Club. And so it's nice to know that we've got 2 more new initiatees that are on their way to the Salty Dog Club. Well, I think that, the navigation team, it's also like funny having this conversation because obviously we work together all the time and trying to talk through these things in a way that is like accessible for the rest of the community to better understand. But the navigation team, I feel like, is so special because it's all based on a model of peer support, which is kind of an umbrella term that has similarly to an umbrella term like affordable housing or trauma-informed care or some of these things that are now probably more into the mainstream knowledge, or at least in the service provider community, everyone provides peer support services. Everyone provides trauma-informed care. And so we talk a lot about like, what does it mean to really be true to the philosophies and true to the intention of those services. And for us, peer support really means elevating people with experience that is relevant, similar, maybe congruent in some ways to what our folks who are staying in our shelter or utilizing our services are going through in the moment, so that there is a person there who has struggled to sign up for food stamps before and been really frustrated about what that system was like, has been mistreated by potentially the mental health system, has not necessarily been successful in mainstream substance use treatment programs or other things, has struggled with mental health and with substance use challenges ourselves, so that we can, when we say to somebody, it's possible for this to happen. And I can say that because I made that happen in my own life. And I think, we've shared a lot. I've shared a lot openly on this show about my own struggles, but I think that that's something that is really special and unique about the way that we provide support services, is that it's not peer support in the sort of model of funding through the Medicaid program that is often the way that peer support is talked about. It really is coming from this place of wanting to show people that there are options available, that it is possible to like envision your life in a different way. So I don't know, does that bring anything up for either of you in your own experience?
I loved the fact that, so I was a cook for 15 years before I got this job, and I spent over a year in jail, and I have felonies on my record, and I was pretty sure that I was going to spend the rest of my life in a kitchen. And so not only having the opportunity to utilize my life experience to help other people navigate that stuff, not only is that amazing, but it was an amazing opportunity for me too, because like you get to a point in recovery or just like kind of trying to pull yourself up by your bootstraps where sometimes it just feels really like it's too hard, you know? Or like you only have this limited amount of options. And so not only does Interfaith like reach out to the community for the unhoused people, but it also gives options for people who have gotten out of that position to further their lives in a better way too. Like I'm so excited about the position that I'm in here and the fact that like my felonies are not a bad thing. It's something like I can have a conversation with someone who just got out of jail from a peer perspective, you know, not just like oh yeah, jail sucks. I've seen Orange is the New Black, you know, but like I've actually sat in the tank with the ladies and just been like, this is the worst.
Totally. Thanks, Wendy, for sharing that. So I guess just to expand a little bit more on the navigation team, specifically, we've got the 3 sub-programs. So we've got the guest support, which at this point now is really focused on working with, that's a 4-person team that's working in the shelter with people who are living there to offer navigation team support services to anybody who wants it. And then we've got a 2-person team who are working with everybody living in the permanent supportive housing apartments that are above the shelter. And then what we're here to talk about today is the REST team, a 3-person team who works with 6 set-aside beds in the Unity Commons shelter, 4 of which are contracted through Providence, St. Peter Hospital, 2 of which are contracted through Multicare Capital Medical. And they are dedicated discharge beds for people with acute, so short-term medical flare-ups, I guess I would say, or flare-ups of chronic conditions or like surgeries, broken bones, kind of acute medical needs, who are experiencing homelessness and don't have anywhere to really recuperate after their hospital stay is done. So is there anything that either of you would add to that, or just about some of the background on how REST got started and what it looks like today?
Yeah, I think that just at a very basic level that someone would get out of the hospital, anyone that gets out of the hospital after having surgery or having some kind of traumatic experience, physical, car accident, whatever, the hospital, they're well enough to be able to be released from the hospital, but really shouldn't be out doing activities, going to work. And then their instructions are to go home and get bed rest. And if someone doesn't have a home to go to, that can be a really serious challenge for their recovery from whatever it was that they were in the hospital for. And what we've seen a lot at REST was someone would go to the hospital for 3 to 5 weeks, and the place they were staying at, their camp or whatever, got raided. All their stuff is gone, and so not only are they now out of the hospital after having surgery or having a wound healed or broken bones fixed or whatever, they now have to start over and have to carry all their belongings around with them and try to find a new camp and try to get resettled, and that can be a real challenge. And we have had people just show up at the shelter in the middle of the night that really needed a place to stay from getting out of the hospital, and we were full. We didn't have a mechanism for doing anything about that, and now we do.
There was no communication often or coordination, so people would just show up in cabs at 1 a.m. from the hospital.
Sometimes needing a wheelchair but not having one.
Yeah. When you were just talking, Raven, I was thinking about the person early on in REST who had a broken neck and only option was like a van. That
he was our very first guest.
Yeah. And just thinking about how like me driving in my car for even like 30 minutes, like how much it hurts my neck and back sometimes, and thinking about like, what would it be like to try to recuperate from a broken neck or a broken back while living in a car, sleeping in a car.
It's wild. Or like something as simple as having a cold turn into pneumonia. And then you have to take 2 weeks of antibiotics and you get out and you're back in the cold.
Right.
It's like we've had a lot of guests return to us. So like people who are going into the hospital, getting better, and then coming out and going back in. And one of the things that I've noticed, because we've had guests who've come in 2-3 times, but they always seem so much more stable in a physical way when they're leaving from rest, because they've had somewhere to sleep that's warm, they have blankets, they have food, they have interaction, and then they have the opportunity to access the things that they may not have realized they could get to. Like someone who gets an amputation is eligible for Social Security disability, but that process is daunting, and so being able to help people start stuff like that is it's really cool to see how valued that is and how it affects the like readmittance of people into the hospital.
Yeah. What are some of the things that people are coming to us with? Like, what are some of the disabling conditions or the acute medical conditions?
We've had lots of people show up with congestive heart failure, lots of amputations, like below the knee amputations, generally speaking, because of diabetic stuff, right? Lots of diabetes.
Wounds.
Lots of
Needing wound care.
Yep.
Yeah, so people, like, also just from a kind of systems efficiency perspective, the way that the hospital admissions work is that when somebody meets medical criteria for hospital admissions, then typically their insurance, especially with the expansion of Apple Health, their insurance would cover their stay up to a certain point. And then like what you were saying, Raven, when somebody's ready to, would normally, like any of us in a housed situation with support systems at home, we would get sent home, told to kick up our feet for a couple of weeks, get help, take work off, whatever. But when people are too fragile to do that out in the street or back in their encampment, what happens is that they become what's called a social admit at the hospital. And that is an exorbitant cost to the hospital. Different studies show different things, but they're typically between $2,500 and $4,500 a day to keep somebody in the hospital. And what we know in Thurston County is that hospital beds are often very full. That was especially true during COVID. And so there is a lot of value in moving people out of hospital beds if they aren't really needing to be there medically. And so that's where this efficiency is really useful. And the other piece of that is that it creates this like dedicated line of communication, dedicated line of a bed for people to go to. So I'm wondering if you all would talk about a little bit about what does that communication look like when you're receiving a referral, processing a referral, and how is that relationship with the nursing staff and the discharge staff? Like, what does that look like?
Well, yeah, we get a call from the hospital saying that they have someone that potentially would meet our criteria for our program. And then we would go over said criteria. And then
we ask them to send us a release of information and a signed copy of our space use agreement, and then any doctor's notes or after visit summary if it's available, so we can really just kind of assess the level of care that's needed.
We have to kind of filter out anyone that needs a higher level of care that we can provide, because we don't have any caregivers, we don't have any nursing staff, we don't have anyone to administer meds, and we don't have any designated mental health professionals. And so if someone isn't capable of taking their own meds, if they need wound care, if they need help transferring or walking, then we kind of accept those folks. And so we just kind of have to work out with the hospital and get a lot of information from them about what the condition of the patient is and their ability to be mobile on their own and be independent.
It's been really cool though. I know I was pretty surprised at the interactions between our organization and the hospitals. I personally have a lot of really negative, have had a lot of really negative interactions in my personal life with medical professionals, and like, you know, things happen. There's always going to be hitches in any giddy up, but for the most part, it's been really awesome to see like how this program has influenced some of the case managers or hospital staff. I've like watched their demeanor change over the course of a few interactions, you know. Seeing people more as people, I think, was the one that got me the most. Like, when I first started doing it, they were like, the patient this and the patient that, and I just always made it a point to say the person's name. Like, well, what about Alice? How is Alice doing today? You know, does she do this or that? Does she need this or that? And I noticed that some of the case managers started calling the patients by their first names, which just felt really good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's been good to develop a relationship with hospital staff, and once we've did a few referrals, we got to really know the staff there, and they're all like really dedicated and really care a lot about the people that they're working with, and yeah, just a shout out to the medical staff at Providence and Multicare.
Yeah.
I think they're all doing a really good job.
Well, and I think too, like, you know, it's my job to always look at the systems or the bigger picture or whatever. And like, I think that just having those interactions, like hospital staff, much like our staff, were stretched so beyond thin, beyond the pale during the pandemic, and just like feeling like there were no options, feeling so overwhelmed, wondering like, you know, you start to ask those kind of like existential questions of like, what are we even doing? The systems feel like they're breaking down so much. And so to have an option like a rest bed and to have those kind of perceptions possibly change, like I see that benefiting more people beyond just the folks who are getting discharged into rest, right? And
Absolutely. It's also like, so the medical system itself is broken, and it's not meant to cater to people who are unhoused. But in working within that broken medical system, like meeting the people who work in there, you start to see that like, yes, the system has problems. Yes, we need to fix certain things about that. But the people are what run it, you know? And so like, if you can do something as simple as like influence someone's perspective on homelessness as a whole and the people that are dealing with that, like that little change can create a huge ripple effect.
And I would say that, I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouths, but like that's probably true the other way too, of us having a better understanding of some of the challenges that people who are working in the medical system are up against every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, you saw the Raven went to check in on one of the guests and saw the setup. You want to?
Oh yeah. I have gone to the hospital to meet the guests before and just ask questions myself and just really get a better sense of what their condition was like. And it was just really busy and chaotic in the hospital, and there was, you know, this station where there's, you know, 8 nurses, all their laptops are like this far apart, and they're all like shoulder to shoulder, and there's like 3 social workers all in the kind of the same condition, and everyone's just running around, and it just seems really like a really difficult job. And what I've heard from them is from the hospitals is that they'll often be in the position where they have 14 people in the ER that need to get admitted, and they have 4 beds, and then here we are saying, well,
I don't know about
is this
that.
person really independent in their ADLs, and they're kind of, and they've been mostly really gracious about, when we have to say we can't take this person. And
it also just was really cool to see, to like gain that perspective on that, because
from there.
Because from our side of the desk, we're just like, why are these people trying to do this or trying to do that? I mean, everybody has their reasons for stuff, but after learning that, it's like it gives you have more appreciation for what it is that they're trying to do, and try to be more compassionate on both sides.
Yeah, totally.
The times that we had made kind of exceptions where we were like, we can probably handle this person, and then they ended up just going back to the hospital right away. Because if someone falls down, that isn't as mobile as independently mobile as we initially thought, then we just can't have people.
It's too dangerous, it's like dangerous. If we had nursing staff on site, if there were other things, but that's like future stuff to think about. For now, it's just a matter of making sure that the people that we do have with us are safe and receiving the level of care that they deserve,
Yeah, totally.
And if we can't give that to them, like as much as I would want to take someone who exceeds our level of care, it would be more detrimental to them in the long run.
It's so hard.
I know.
We want to take everyone.
I want to take everyone and take care of them.
Somebody has very severe, mental health issues, or like can't really walk, or need, we had one person that just needed someone to hold the bandage in place on their back, and they could tape it themselves, and having to say no, we can't, we can't touch the person because
those are the rules.
Those are the rules. We don't have the training. We don't have.
Well,
it seems silly, but it's all real.
Because if we're helping someone patch up their wound and they end up getting MRSA because of it, it's like,
I think that's been one of the hardest lessons that we've learned as an organization over time, is just how well-intentioned going above and beyond for people can cause unintentional harm. And so learning what limitations and boundaries and all of that look like, and how to work within other systems with that, it's a very delicate thing. You all do it amazingly every day.
Thank you.
I think that even simple as if we did wound care for someone, or any of the staff did wound care for someone, then the person would think that they had gotten medical attention when they didn't.
Right.
And that Nurse Raven had took care of me, and so I don't need to go to a doctor.
It's also It's also one of those things where it's like we do peer-led services, and we're geared towards helping people figure out what structure they need to maintain themselves. And so if we're providing services that we shouldn't be, then they're not able to figure out how to get those services down the appropriate avenue. Because like the Ole Free Clinic, Monday and Wednesday and Friday, you can go in and get wound care done there. But if they never had to do that, then they wouldn't know to do it later. So like if they end up leaving the shelter and they're like, well, Nurse Raven's not there anymore, so how do I do this? It's like there's so many layers to trying to help people navigate situations like that.
Totally. What, without, obviously giving away names or identifying information, are there any highlight reel kind of stories that come to mind that you'd want to share? Some of your favorites?
You should the Amahora House.
Oh.
It's sad, but it's...
that's really... Okay.
Do you want me to do that one?
Yeah, you should do that one, but...
So we had a guest who came to us with end-stage cancer. When he got to us, basically he was like, the doctors told me I have a month to live. And the only thing that he wanted was not to die outside. He was like, I just don't want to die outside.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of really like technical stuff going on. So it was really difficult to get him into an adult family home or an end-of-life palliative care because of history that he had with the hospital previously. They didn't want to do that. They had a lot of problems with some actions he had taken, and
a lot of time, not to cut you off, but like just a lot of times if people have a history of drug use or of mental health challenges, then they won't qualify for some of the advanced level of care placements. And so then it just leaves like either them to stay in the hospital or to go into the homeless service system, both which are not really equipped or suited or appropriate for that. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, no, you're good. So we have a partnership with a doctor in town who brought us dinners, I think on Wednesdays or Friday nights for a really long time. He also brought us like wound care supplies, and he ran a hospice, a volunteer-run hospice center. And unfortunately, because it was peak pandemic, the hospice center was not up and running. The doctor didn't have volunteers to do it, and he also the guest also needed a doctor to follow him, and this doctor followed him and figured out how to get the volunteer staff needed so that this person could live out the rest of his life the way that he wanted to.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, he died reading poetry.
Yeah.
With one of the nurses. It's just really awesome. Like, it's heartbreaking, but when you think about stuff like that, like how do you want to end your life? And like the only thing that this guy wanted was to not die outside.
Yeah, and it's like, and his options were so limited.
Limited.
That to like not be the only reality.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
He was a good one.
We've lost a lot of people.
We've lost a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have a guest who came in. I actually just found this out recently, and I'm super stoked about it. So we had a guest come and stay with us, and she has heart problems. So your ejection fraction is how much oxygenated blood your heart is pushing out into the rest of your body.
Okay.
Generally speaking, you want that to be very high, like 80%. You want lots of oxygenated blood. And people with congestive heart failure generally have a very low ejection fraction, and hers was 25%.
Oof. Yeah.
And they basically told her, they were like, you need to take your medications regularly. You need to take care of yourself. You need to watch your diet. You need to weigh yourself. You got to do all of these things. And so, you know, she had been staying at a camp. She was dealing with a domestic violence situation and didn't want to go back to that. And we were able to coordinate getting her a bed in the shelter. And so now she's working with one of the guest support navigators who's continuing to follow up with her on her medical care and then any other basic needs stuff she has. And 2 days ago, she came up and gave me a really big hug and told me that her heart is now pumping out 40%.
Wow.
And she didn't think that was possible. Like, she started crying. She's just like, I'm going to get to see my kids.
Oh,
like,
that's awesome.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
She was like, there's actually hope at the end of this,
Yeah.
you know? And generally speaking, I don't know about you, but for me, success stories are just like, did this person achieve the thing they set out to achieve?
Yeah.
You know, not did they get housed? If that's what they wanted and they got it, then we've succeeded. But if they didn't want that, then what is it that they did want? And all she really wanted was to not feel like crap anymore. And she, oh God, it's so cool to see how excited she is about how much better she's doing health-wise, you know?
Well, and if you try to think about like the impact that a 25%, what is it called?
Ejection fraction.
Ejection fraction would have on your ability to like
Yeah.
go live out your regular life. And so it's like, sure, her immediate goal is to feel better, but now what opportunity for the next goals is she going to want to set once she's feeling better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you tell the story that you told me earlier today?
Oh, yeah. We just had a new guest come on last Thursday, and when I was giving this person a tour, I took him into the lounge, and everyone, all of the residents, the assigned guests at the shelter, there was a bunch of people in there, and they all just said, "Oh, hey, look, there's a new person. Welcome!" And they just had just made food and offered this person some. And one person came up and introduced himself and said, "I'm not staff, but I'm a very helpful person, and would love to help you out with anything that you might need." And he just made our guests feel really welcome. Most of the time when we get rest guests, within a couple of days, we see them in the lounge, just sitting at a table talking with the assigned guests there, and everyone's just really welcoming.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Whenever I'm giving people a tour of the shelter, I will have an assigned guest follow along. Generally, it's be like almost every time an assigned guest will start tagging along and be like, "Oh, check it out over here. There's this other thing. And if you want to go down, there's meals downtown too." And I just love that.
Some of the people we get in rest are new to homelessness. They had lost everything when they went to the hospital. And that is very common for us.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's really nice that the people that stay at the shelter are so welcoming and sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that ideally we would be able to, because the rest beds, the 6 beds set aside with the rest of the 58 shelter beds, those are shorter term. So just like we need to free up space in the hospital beds, we also need to ensure that those beds are having turnover. But our assigned guests, they can stay as long as they need it, because we know that we have such a lack of permanent supportive housing in our community that there are very limited options for them to move on to. So in an ideal situation, somebody would be leaving rest to a housing option. But in the case that can't happen, then we would try to figure out if there's another option, like potentially moving them to a shelter bed. And so when that has worked out, I feel like it's been really amazing. And I think that what I was also thinking about when you were talking about other shelter guests, like welcoming them in, is that, if we were to be sent home after a hospital stay, we would have, ideally, right? And I think the 3 of us would have that kind of support and community, people helping us get food, people helping us do that. And so even in common medical respite programs, people might get discharged to a hotel room, which is what we did originally, or to maybe like an individualized room, but that sort of sense of the lounge and the food and the community coming together to help each other out, I would say is pretty unique, I think, to our program.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's more of a like family feel, And I've heard guests talk about it like that, where they're just like, well, it's a big old family and families fight sometimes.
Yep.
One of them said to me.
We do. We do.
The biggest conflicts that come up between guests are because
they're friends.
Such good friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Speaking of like when there aren't housing options and trying to ideally get someone into a shelter bed, one more success story I thought of was we had a person who was new to homelessness come into the program. She went into the hospital and lost her housing. And we were able to work real hard with her and get a lot of her goals achieved. And one of those goals was to get a shelter bed, which ended up leading to her getting an apartment in the permanent supportive housing side too.
Yeah.
So it was like really cool to see this pipeline work where it was like, you know, I mean, and she worked at it too. She did her best. She was all over it, making phone calls every day. Like she was trying her best. And it was just really cool to see, like, she went from going into the hospital and having this like life-altering thing happen where she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and then losing her housing and being stuck in this hotel with people she doesn't know, like trying to figure it out, getting into the shelter, meeting people at the shelter and like finding a sense of community there, and then getting into an apartment and like still having that community close by. Like it's just really cool to see that happen.
Yeah, and just getting that support, or like getting to know staff, and because something that I have like a question on here of like, what was the biggest surprise about the REST program? And I want to hear that. And I want to say that our biggest surprise about the permanent supportive housing, the apartments, I think, or at least one of them, was just how scared people were to move into their own apartments and to leave the community of the shelter and to leave the support network there. And I hear so often many of the residents say, like, thank goodness we all knew each other moving into this building, because otherwise it would have been very isolating and scary, even though there's support there. And so I think that just as a community, the way that we think about resolving homelessness has to fundamentally include this sense of belonging and the sense of actual like inclusion in the community, or else it's not enough.
Yeah, getting someone into a house isn't enough, especially if they've spent years on the streets. You know, it's like you really have to, because like if you think about it, man, if you move to a new city into a 1-bedroom apartment and you're not working, like you have to really work hard to put yourself out there to meet people, you know, and just because, I don't know, just because somebody is housed doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy, you know? Like it takes a village.
Yeah, totally. So what has been the biggest surprise about the REST program that maybe you weren't expecting or has kind of come to light?
One thing that just is kind of a personal surprise for me was just that I feel like I'd always been mistrustful of the medical system. Most of it's like for profit or either motivations, like drug companies. I mean, that big lawsuit with Purdue Pharma, you know, that happened recently, and where I just saw it as this kind of this monolith of sort of like people with like dubious motives or whatever. But I had learned about the miracles of medical science that I really didn't, I mean, I was aware of, but I just have seen so many times where people that had been living on the streets a long time and hadn't had access to medical care and didn't go to doctors and didn't trust hospitals or doctors and had chronic health conditions that once they got the medical care that they needed, it kind of really got them really fixed up. I mean, we've seen people with very, very severe and complex medical conditions that once they were on a kind of a regimen and saw their providers regularly and were taking in a position where they could take medications regularly, then they were like doing really well and were able to, that was a foreseeable future for them, was to just do like pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, and that, and then the surprising thing was that if someone would hit like another rough patch and would be back on the streets and then stop seeing their providers and then just kind of spiral back down, where they could just go back to being okay again once they were reintroduced to the system.
Totally.
And saw the providers regularly again. And I was just really surprised at how well that works. And I imagine if any medical providers are watching, and be like, well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. You're just not like, and so I I honestly have become less gated in this job than I have been more so.
Hell
Just
yeah.
the opposite trajectory of social workers, I feel like, half the time.
Yeah.
That is making me, I really want to hear your
Okay.
answer too, but that is making me, will you just say like, because a big part of that establishment of stability is what you work on with people.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just give like a quick like overview of what rest navigators do with people after they come to us?
Yeah. Probably the very first thing that we do is look over their doctor's notes and their sort of after visit summary they get from the hospital and take a look at all of the needs that they have around their medical situation. And that is often establishing with the PCP, which most people don't have already, a primary care physician that most people don't have. And then they have to go see some specialist, a cardiologist, orthopedic doctor, or something like that.
Pulmonology or
Pulmonology. They may need labs. They may need, and they have a whole pile of prescriptions that they need to take. And so the very first thing that we do is we'll establish with a primary care doctor. And we are very, very fortunate to work with the Valley View Health Clinic.
Shout out
Give a
Valley
big
View. We
shout out
love
to
you
Valley View
so
because
much.
they have been really instrumental most of the time. When we first started, before we really got going with establishing a relationship with Valley View, we would just do like everyone does and call basically out off the internet of CMAR or whatever doctors are available in the area, and they would all say, well, we're full. We're not taking new patients right now, or our
Or
new
it's
patients
6
are
months out.
6 weeks to 6 months out of seeing them. And then Valley View basically just goes through our whole caseload and see somebody within the first week that they're there. And then once they see the Valley View doctor for the first time, then they get a referral to a specialist, and then we take them to a specialist. They usually see the primary care doctor at least twice, but sometimes 3 times.
Yeah, it's at least twice. Normally it's once a week,
But
depending on
usually
the
once a week
person's
while they're-
medical situation. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, while they're in rest, and then because they want the person to go to the specialist and then go back to the doctor, and so
Or if they're if they're taking new medications or have adjusted their meds, they want to check in about it, stuff like that. Yeah.
we will give rides to the doctor's appointments, and we'll often go in with the person if it's okay with them. We're really clear about it's really client directed, and we don't have to be involved. And even if the person says that they want us involved, and it just changes their mind once they get to the doctor's appointment, or even in the middle of it. And
Yep.
there has been times where the doctor was like, "Well, it's time to drop your drawers," and
They're like,
They're
I'll be
"Get out."
I will. I'm going to step out, and so and then we also work on other goals that the person wants to work on, and that is often revolved around getting housing,
Benefits.
getting disability benefit. Yeah, we often have people that are new to having a disabling condition, such as amputation or something like that. And so we will help them get started. 30 days isn't quite enough time to really find somebody housing or see through the benefits,
But we can get them started
done it
with a
before.
heat packet, doing coordinated entry to try and provide sheltering options in the meantime.
yeah.
So just basically trying to get them established to primary care so they can do all their medical follow-up, but then also trying to get them connected to at least getting the process started for Social Security, disability income, housing, coordinated entry lists,
EBT benefits,
food stamps,
replacement documents, all that stuff.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Wendy, what would you say has been your biggest surprise?
I think my biggest surprise was how much of an impact me joining someone during their medical appointment would have. I did not think that, one, people would want me there because it's their medical stuff, right? That's like, you don't talk about how much you make, you don't talk about your medical stuff, just stuff like that. And a lot of the guests were like, not only did they want me there, they insisted on having a navigator there. And it's just really, it was profound to see the change in like someone's ability to advocate for themselves. You know, I'd just be sitting there taking notes and I'd be like, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you about this thing. And I'm like, yes. I had a conversation with one of the guests, the guest that ended up getting into an apartment. She went into the hospital, and when she was released, she was like, they should have released me with oxygen, but they didn't, because my O2 was like, I think you have to have an 88 or below, and she had like an 89 or a 90. And so they didn't release her with oxygen, but it's like this marginal difference. And we spent a lot of time just kind of talking about like how to advocate for yourself, and like, you know, you're worth it. Like, you deserve all of the things, and you should fight for them, you know? And she ended up going back to the hospital and getting re-referred to us. And when she came back, she was like, I got my oxygen. That doctor, he said that I was at 90, and I said, you sit your butt down. We're going to spend 15 more minutes because I bet you it's going to drop. And it did. And so she got the oxygen that she needed. But like, that was just from sitting in a PCP appointment. Like, we had this conversation, and she was just like, I really like the way you talked to her, and how did you do that? And we talked about like writing questions down and stuff. You know, it was just, I did not realize that. It was super surprising to me that was going to be such a big part of this. I was just really blown away. It's also my favorite part. I love helping people do that, because I have a hard time advocating for myself in my hospital appointments, but not for other people.
I know, I'm stuck.
Right.
No, that's, I mean, go ahead.
Oh, just, I know I can really go to bat for somebody else.
Right.
I still get lost when I go to the doctor, and I was like, oh, I forgot to ask about it.
Yep.
Whatever.
It's not appropriate. I shouldn't ask him. I'm just going to be bothering him. But then somebody else, I'm like, hey,
you gotta.
Don't you forget. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's just so like how crucial of a step that is not really like formally funded at all in the process. Like, there's not, I mean, I think more now than before, managed healthcare companies and like insurance companies might have patient advocates or things like that, but it's like still so often not accessible to people who have the least amount of resources in the community, right? And like the availability of a service versus like the access of the service, and having, you know, trust and rapport and skills that people can say like, yeah, I want you in there, you know? It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
It's really cool. How many people have been served by the REST program at this point?
So I looked this up. 83.
Awesome.
83 people.
So it's 83 people
who have been referred to us.
Who've been referred. Okay, cool. And it's been just about over a year.
Year and a half?
Almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
We started in July of 2021.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not, quite a year and a few months.
Year and a few months, yeah.
And that's just through, 6 dedicated spaces. So
and only 2 hospitals doing the referrals. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if you could change anything about the REST program, what would you change?
So personally would be the timeline. So right now we have a 30-day maximum stay. So if somebody comes to us on October 1st, they can stay with us until October 31st at the maximum. I recognize that the program is geared towards acute medical flare-ups, and that 30 days is pretty reasonable for that. But ideally for me, the thing that I would change would be to have a 3-month stay, because that gives you so much more of an opportunity to not only take care of someone's medical health stuff, helping them establish those routines and then maintain them so that it becomes habitual, because when you have never taken meds before, you get out of the hospital and they have 20 meds that you have to take 3 times a day. I can help you set up a med strip and I can help you figure that out. But until you've done it a lot, it's not going to be second nature to you. It'll be easier to just not deal with it, you know? And then also for like social services, where it's like, you know, getting someone into housing or sheltering is incredibly difficult to do in 30 days. And I recognize that that's not the mission, but it is part of it. And so like having 3 months to just really nail stuff down with someone is, it would be the thing that I would change. That'd be the one thing I would change.
I would like to see us be at some point being able to take people get referrals from outside of the hospitals. We get calls a lot from other navigators, from other agencies, from other hospitals. We got a call a couple times to Mason County.
Shelton Hospital.
Shelton Hospital had called us and asked for, said they gotten calls from mental health
oneself.
inpatient.
Oh,
treatment.
yeah.
So being able, and also being able to do mental health respite be really good, which would take us having a designated mental health professional on staff. But I would love to be able to do that. I wish we had more beds.
Yeah.
And we would take, sometimes when we're full, it's a real bummer to turn people away.
I hate that feeling.
That's
Yeah.
the majority of referrals that we don't accept are because of lack of space, typically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 90% of our turnaways are due to capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of turnaways for that don't meet our criteria that we
okay.
could get if we had nursing staff and or caregivers and or mental health professionals
Yeah.
on site. And you know, one of the things that I've gotten calls from, you know, from OnlyMap or from the CRC saying that they had someone that needed surgery, and it would be real nice if we could just have the person schedule a bed
Yep.
to have after they got done with their surgery. But
Well,
what I had
sometimes doctors won't perform the surgery if they don't have a bed to go
Yep.
to afterwards. And so that can be, totally a
Yeah.
barrier for even getting the surgery.
right, and they can't have a maybe because
No.
we have to be first come first serve
Yep.
because of the way the funding is set up for the hospital. And it's just, I mean, it's a thing that happens with shelter beds all the time. Like you have to have them available. You have to have them always full. And you have to have them, you know, it just isn't really
Always ready to
have
somebody
somebody in
Yeah.
it, but they always have to always be full every night. And so that's like, it's a real trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to the growth of this program because I think that at some point in the future we will be able to do things like schedule people out for a bed because like talk about providing a service, right? If somebody really needs medical help and they can't get it because they can't have a bed, like if we had the capacity to do that, that would be rad.
Yeah.
Same thing with mental health providers. Like it would just be, I love the growth, like
The
opportunities.
potential for
Yeah.
what we can do.
Yep.
At some point.
Well, I think that's definitely the hope. And there's been a lot of advancements, particularly in Washington State, on funding expansion for medical respite through Medicaid expansion. And so that's all something that we are really excited about. And it's just been so awesome to get this year and a half of experience under our belt because Thurston County has never done this before. And so just working with the hospitals to establish what we need it to look like in a partnership has been really, really cool. So I do want to just shout out one more time to Providence St. Peter Hospital and CAP Medical through Multicare. We love this partnership with you and really, do hope to see it grow and include other area providers in the future. So we talked about more beds. We talked about clinical staff like nursing, mental health professionals. Is there anything else about the future of the REST program that you'd like to see?
Well, at one point I had wanted to see us in our own building. But I also love the community part of it too. So it's like I want to have more space And I don't want to give up the community around us.
But maintain the opportunity for community building and that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Mostly it's just I want to be able to serve the people that need it. However many they might be, you know, I want to be able to accept every referral that calls us.
That's really, That's really
you get a bed. You get a
able
bed.
to-
You get a bed. You get a bed.
Yeah.
I want to be Oprah. You get a
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah. Yeah. I also would just love to have like a weigh station and
Yes.
like a blood pressure cuff, like a little area.
Where you like weigh
Just, like,
yourself
really
and do
say,
your
Oh,
blood
yeah.
pressure and temperature and stuff, you know?
That
because
seems
Just
pretty
a little-
doable.
a lot of our
Yeah.
people have to do that every day. They have to do their blood pressure, weigh themselves because of their, heart stuff or whatever.
Yeah,
And it would
the
just be so
self-service
fun.
like weigh station.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I also really, really want to see. Us reach out more and partner with more organizations. I want to be able to take referrals. So the Edward Thomas House up in Seattle can take referrals from anyone in the community. And I don't know how they made that happen, but that's my ideal. Would be anybody who needs it. So if Sidewalk called us, we could take the referral from them, you know? But
Yeah.
it's so complicated, and you really have to flush out the logistics of how the program works before you can start expanding on that level. It's just not reasonable at this point. I don't think, anyways.
I would really love to see, and I think we're going to naturally grow this. We're already working on a few things with both St. Martin's Nursing and Clover Park Technical College also, but I would love to see the ability to have, like we have Masters of Social Work students come do their practicums. I would love to see students be able to do that, because I think that the perspective that is gained from being embedded in the shelter is one that is a really unique perspective that I don't think is like very embedded in most traditional nursing programs, yet they interact with folks experiencing chronic homelessness all the time. And so I would, from just like a systems transformation standpoint, I would really love to see our ability to bring in students and get that experience early in their nursing careers.
I love that. That's the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, is there anything else that you would like the community to know generally about the work you're doing? Anything at all about issues of homelessness, anything big, burning desires that you'd like the community to know?
Yeah, I think I do. I just think that what we're doing works, and that I think that a lot of people in the community will drive by Ensign Road and say, "Oh my God, look, all this money is going to homeless services, and look at this, and you can nothing's happening or whatever." And it's just we're all playing the long game here.
Yeah.
And it can be like a generation or more to really get where we want to be. And we're doing the work that we're doing is really critical and important. And part of it is just, or the part that's most meaningful for me is just establishing trust with people that have had no reason to trust anyone for most of their lives. And the unconditional positive regard and building community is just a very critical and very first step in whatever, like solving the homeless crisis, they call it, and I just think from a standpoint of like people, the way that a lot of people talk about homelessness is like it's a real problem for everyone except for the people that are experiencing homelessness.
Yep.
And that is something that I feel really our work is just really getting kind of inside of that, and really seeing people
As people.
and God, like Apple Health, like the Affordable Care Act, was just like, that was huge. That was so big. I mean, I cannot imagine if our people didn't have access to health insurance, what this would look like. It would just be horrible, and it wouldn't be like whatever cheaper
No.
to not have it.
No.
It's just not at all. And
What did you say it was? $4,500 a day? Definitely not
in the
cheaper.
hospital, for sure. So that's the main thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything.
Cool. Well, thank you both so much. It's inspiring for me, even though I get to see you a lot. It's inspiring for me to just hear about where your heart and your experience is. And we love you, and you're so valued as part of this organization and this community. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Meg.
All right. Well, Corey will be back week after next, and we are looking forward to always seeing you again in the future. Check out this show on our Facebook page. It'll be up on YouTube in a few days. And then don't forget that past episodes are now streaming in podcast format on Spotify. So Lean In Olympia, Thurston County, and we are super happy to be here. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.